There are 2 equinoxes every year, one around the 20th of March, the other around the 22nd of September. The equinoxes represent 2 moments in the year when the sun is exactly above the equator and day and night are of equal length. The equinoxes represent fleeting moments of balance. They are sacred in-between spaces. They are portals of transition from the end of one cycle into the start of another. They are thresholds between 2 states of being. The September equinox ushers in the Libra season. It thus brings with it the symbolism of the scales, the balance between light and dark, the dualities of life, action and rest, joy and sorrow, giving and receiving, the visible and the shadow self, the yearning for equilibrium, justice, partnership and harmony. The 2 equinoxes represent the ultimate dance between action in spring and rest in autumn. In the Northern Hemisphere, the September equinox marks the end of summer and the beginning of autumn, the shortening of days. In the Southern Hemisphere, we see the end of winter transforming into the start of spring, the lengthening of days. In the North, the September equinox is gratitude for the harvest reaped. It's about the saving of seeds for the next year and the culling of the herd, sacrificing now to preserve energy for the inward journey of winter. For the South, the September equinox embodies gratitude for the restful period of winter now ending. It is the moment just before the seed cracks open and life forces its way towards the sun. Like a deep breath before a sprint. No matter where you are in the world right now, both of these energies are available to you as part of the collective of humanity and the ecosystems within which we exist. This pick a card reading is intended to help you to reflect on the Northern Hemisphere energies of harvest and release, and the Southern Hemisphere energies of seeding and beginning at the time of the September equinox. Each reading concludes with additional cards of guidance on how these energies might be integrated for your highest purpose. In each reading, both the light and shadow aspects of these energies are explored. In the spirit of the onset of spring here in the Southern Hemisphere, you can choose between this beautiful orange nasturtium flower, this light white asylum bloom, and this joyful yellow daisy. The timestamps are in the description box below. Welcome to those of you who chose this beautiful orange nasturtium flower. This is your reading. So as explained in the introduction to this video, we have Northern Hemisphere or autumn equinox energies of harvest and release over here. We have Southern Hemisphere or spring equinox seeding and beginning energies over here. And in the middle, we have guidance on how these energies might be integrated for your highest purpose. We also have what might be considered the light or conscious aspects and the shadow or unconscious aspects. So let's get into your reading. Let's begin with your Northern Hemisphere autumn equinox energies. So we have the Ten of Wands and we have the Father of Pentacles. This is a very fitting card for an autumn equinox energy. If we consider that it implies a summer of really hard work, being out there and coming to the point in the year where the season is changing. Autumn is coming and it's time to harvest all the fruits of our labors. And we can see here this character has all their bags packed. I believe this is a bison. I stand corrected. A most sturdy, strong and powerful ally. The character's bags are packed and you can see that a long path has already been walked, and these torches represent actions. Of course, wands is fire energy, it's all about action. So here you can see the legacy of the summer, and here is the harvest. The thing, of course, about the Ten of Wands is being a 10. It's the end of the cycle, and it is highly likely that this person is exhausted, and if it weren't for her ally, this would be an incredibly heavy load to carry. Nevertheless, it does look like, at least in certain aspects of your life, the summer energies have been put to very good use, and you're coming to the end of that journey with a tremendous stock of goods, outputs, products, many things to show for the hard work that you've put in. So what do we have in the shadow or unconscious aspect of this autumn equinox energy? More to the point, what needs to be released? We have the Father of Pentacles, which is the King of Pentacles. This is an extremely accomplished, experienced, confident individual, somebody who has long since mastered the material domain, how to take care of themselves, their families, their communities. This is a respected character, a steady character. someone who can be trusted, who is solid and grounded. Their antlers are fully formed and fully grown, each representing different stages of life. So what can we understand about these two cards together, these two aspects of this harvest and release energy of the autumn equinox? Very often in life, we have the understanding or the belief that life is a journey of acquisition, acquiring skills, education, experience, and then putting all of that to work in order to perhaps accumulate material possessions, material security, so that we can be this person. And yet, if you look at this character, it is depicted as quite a young girl. She's very windswept, and she's very alone, but for her ally, who is helping to carry her burdens. There is a very deep wisdom in these two cards. And I think it's really pertinent in the world that we live in today. This aspiration was something that belonged to earlier generations, perhaps our parents or grandparents or even great-grandparents. But what we know about real life is that this is not a given, that doing all that hard work, investing so much time and energy and labor into producing and accumulating doesn't guarantee this. Life is far too precarious and unpredictable. And so what I'm taking as the core message of this autumn equinox aspect, from the point of view of what needs to be released, is this idea that this is the end of your journey, is going to lead you here. I don't mean to put a negative slant on this. It's more of a realism. We can strive towards this, but often this is what it will end up looking and feeling like. And this also makes me think of burnout. This is actually a very sad image the more I look at it. So much effort, and here she is alone in a summer dress with a thin coat. She's not here. Something I've learned in my life is to not chase this too hard, because I personally have ended up here too many times. So I think the wisdom here is that, of course, we all need to labor, put in work. We've got to survive and provide and hopefully thrive. but I think we would do well to release this aspiration or this belief that many of us are raised with, that this hard work will always and inevitably lead to this kind of security and mastery. What's really asked of us in today's world is to be far more resilient and adaptable and flexible and courageous. All right, let's see what the Southern Hemisphere spring equinox seeding and beginning energies are. We have the Three of Swords and we have the Sun of Swords. Two Swords cards. So immediately the energy here for the spring equinox, the seeding and beginning, has to do with ways of thinking, perspectives, ideas, the narratives that we tell ourselves, that we construct about ourselves. So the Three of Swords, as we can see depicted here, there's somebody in a tremendous amount of anguish. The whole scene is dark and windy and cold. Her heart is out of her body. Its strings, her heart strings, have been snagged on this gnarly looking tree. And there are tears in her heart. This card talks to how either our own ways of thinking about ourselves cause us to break our own hearts, really. This might be patterns of negative thinking, self-loathing, imposter syndrome, or just the sheer weight of life experience that makes it difficult sometimes to hold kind thoughts towards oneself in a way that supports one's heart. So when thinking about the spring equinox and the energy of seeding and beginning, it feels very much to me that in order for the seeding to happen in a way that is likely to be highly productive going forward, that there are patterns of thinking, narratives, forms of communication that we need to come to terms with, that we need to feel into and maybe deconstruct, unpack, and look at and heal. And maybe that's what the seeding actually is about. Maybe that's what the spring equinox energy is offering, is a moment not a material moment, but a thinking, feeling moment that you are seeding, a new way of talking to yourself, a new way of how you allow others to talk to you. In the shadow or unconscious aspect of this spring equinox seeding, we have the Son of Swords, which I think fits really well with what I was just saying. The Son of Swords is the Knight of Swords in the traditional tarot. This Knight of Swords is depicted as an owl, which brings with it wisdom, of course. However, as you can see, there's a very single-mindedness about this knight. Very clear sense of direction, eye on the target. Piercing communication, clarity of thought and objectives. The message here seems really clear, that while you may have ideas or plans that you want to seed in the spirit of the spring equinox energy, and you want to move forward in a very particular direction with a clear plan, to do so would be to deny what is actually a broken heart rooted in ways of thinking that are not serving you well and are not going to serve you well into the future. So I think it's very easy to be seduced by ignoring this. Let's not look at it. Let's rather have this very clear direction and just go for it. A single-mindedness. In this context, I'm interpreting it as not seeing all sides, being surgical and ignoring the emotional content of any ideas, perspectives, thoughts. Let's see what guidance there is on how these energies might be integrated for your highest purpose. We have the Six of Swords and we have the Mother of Cups. That is really, really beautiful. That is so beautiful in the context of this reading. So the Six of Swords, again, sword cards, so implies ideas, thoughts, communication, narratives, and so on. This card usually represents a moment in a person's journey where you are moving away from some kind of turbulence, something that hasn't been serving you, into calmer waters. And here you can see this character, and I cannot but see again the resonance between these two. Is it the same person? Again, she's out in the elements with just a small wrap, but there's the suitcase. There's such a vulnerability in this reading. A vulnerability that these two cards in the shadow, unconscious, or perhaps subconscious aspect, is trying to cover over and not acknowledge the emotion of what it takes to go through these cycles of seeding, nurturing, harvesting, preserving the seeds and seeding again. It's a deeply turbulent and emotional journey which these cards deny. They make it look so easy, so clear, so straightforward. So the first aspect of this guidance is to acknowledge where you're at emotionally at this September equinox, and not to be stoic, put on a brave face, or allow yourself to be duped and misled by false narratives. And to support this entire process is the beautiful Mother of Cups, the Queen of Cups. Taking you under her wing with the Ace of Cups here by her side. This is love embodied. This is caring, nurturing, selflessness. But also selfishness, because the Queen of Cups is the Queen, because she understands that in order to take care of others, in order to be bold and brave and go out into the world to do what we need to do, we need to be both selfless and selfish. We need to engage in self-care, dealing with what's underlying, what's happening in the background, the bits that we maybe don't show to the outside world. Very much so to acknowledge when we're exhausted, when we just have no energy for others anymore, and we need to step out, step away, and engage in some very deep self-care. So this is very beautiful, and I really encourage you, as you stop to reflect during this September equinox on where you've been productive and active, and what you've produced, and what has that brought up for you emotionally, and what is it that you need to resolve inside of yourself between the way you think and feel as you start a new cycle in the spirit of the spring equinox, and to hold the energy of the Mother of Cups as you're holding space. I wish you so much love at this September equinox and all the best on your next adventure. Until next time. Welcome to those of you who chose this beautiful, delicate little asylum bloom. This is your group. As I described in the introduction to this reading, we have 3 sets of cards. Over here we have the Northern Hemisphere or autumn equinox energies of harvest and release. On the right we have Southern Hemisphere spring equinox energies of seeding and beginning. And in the middle, some guidance on how these energies might be integrated for your highest purpose. Also, in each of the sets of the cards, we have what might be considered the light or conscious aspects and the shadow or unconscious aspects. Let's get into your reading. So for your Northern Hemisphere autumn equinox side of your reading, we have the 4 of Pentacles and the Wheel of Fortune. In many respects, this is the perfect card representing the harvest energies of the autumn equinox. Here we can see the 4 of Pentacles, so it has everything to do with our material world. And as you can see, this character has their 4 pentacles, the fruits of their labor, the outcomes of their activities, the outputs of projects, the benefits derived from whatever it is that you have been investing in and actively engaging in the summer aspects of your life at the moment, or over the past 6 months actually, since the last equinox. The thing about the 4 of Pentacles is, on the one hand, it signals the really important self-preservation and conservation of our energy and of the fruits of our labors. And this really resonates with the idea of collecting up the seeds from your crops and storing them for a later time, for when spring comes and it's time to plant again and to start afresh. The other side of this card though, and it's really well represented here, both in the energy of this individual and the fact that they are clutching the fruits of their labors to themselves. It can lean into being too guarded, holding on too tightly. And of course this runs counter to the laws of life, which are that things are always changing and shifting. But that said, overall, it really is the perfect representation of the time of harvest for the Northern Hemisphere autumn equinox this September. So let's see what the shadow or unconscious aspect is telling us. And here we have the Wheel of Fortune. The Wheel of Fortune is exactly that card that reminds us that the cycles of life go on whether we are with them or without them, whether we're on board or we're resisting. The world is always turning. The seasons are always coming and going. Day turns into night, turns into day. Sometimes our fortunes are up and things go our way, and it seems that whatever we put our energy into bears fruit, and at other times we seem to be completely out of sync with the cycles and the energies around us and within us, and nothing seems to go our way. So the message here is really very, very simple. In terms of the autumn equinox energies, do exactly what is being asked of you at this time of the year, and that is to collect together the seeds, the fruits of your labor, and to preserve them, to put them away for later investment when the time is right. But to remember that there's virtually no point in trying to hold on to what you've got, because it blocks the flow of energy. So you need to develop the wisdom, the intuitive sense about when do I pack my seeds away in their dark, dry corner so that they can preserve their energy, and then when do I release? I think it's a call about simply getting in tune with your own and the world around you, the flow, the cyclical nature of things, and not to be fear-driven, but to be forward-looking and open. Be prepared for when the opportunities arise. And it looks like that's what you're doing. On the spring equinox side, which is all about seeding and beginning, we have the Queen of Swords and the Chariot. The Queen of Swords is a very powerful character. This is somebody who has tremendous clarity of thought and intention, that uses their words in very decisive and astute ways. This is a maturity of perspective, ideas, and the ability to communicate. The Queen of Swords is also very unforgiving. She takes no nonsense. She uses that sword with wisdom, but quite ruthlessly, to cut out untruths, falsities, misconceptions, whether it be in others or in herself. This is a very interesting depiction of the Queen of Swords. She's looking somewhere off into the distance and seems very, very lost in thought. There's also this very curious little cage beneath this rock, or as part of this rock that she's sitting on. And in it is a bowl of water. Water, of course, is emotion. So that is also a typical aspect of the Queen of Swords archetype, is her intellect is far more evident than her emotions. And here it's as if her emotions are kept very guarded, carved into the rock of her throne. So what does this tell us? What is this energy saying in terms of the spring equinox energy of seeding and beginning? It's suggesting that for those aspects of your life where you are looking to plant new seeds, start something new, that there is a need for reflection, as we can see she is doing, some time out to stop and think very deeply about what it is you're embarking upon, and to have at the ready this sword of clarity, clarity of thought, honesty, astuteness. And it might even be that whatever it is you're planning to do, you could benefit tremendously from the input of some kind of expert. So I think the message here is fairly clear, really. And I'm not surprised, given that this is the spring equinox, seeding, new beginnings side of the reading. This urge, this desire to get moving, to get going with your new project, your new idea, your new adventure. But it's been tempered by this need to just pause and think through the details, be clear, get expert advice if you need to. Edit yourself, cut out the unnecessary, the superfluous. What's beautiful is that it's underneath this is this energy. So once you have, with the maturity of a Queen of Swords, dealt with your plans and refining your ideas, know well that you have the full force of horsepower behind you to launch when the time is right. So let's see what the cards have to say about how these different energies might be integrated. And what can you learn? What can you take forward? We have the Nine of Pentacles and we have the Judgment card. So in terms of guidance, the Nine of Pentacles and the Judgment card. The Nine of Pentacles, of course, is all about coming to the end of a cycle. It's about material abundance, enjoying the fruits of one's labor, being self-sufficient. It's a very Empress energy in that regard, abundance and fertility. The Judgment card, being number 20, is right at the end of the Fool's journey. And it's the card that asks us to stop and reflect on the past cycle. What exactly did it take for us to get here? In what ways did we have to sacrifice ourselves or others? Did we compromise ourselves or others? What did we bring to the table that was restorative, healthy, constructive, good for the collective as well as for ourselves? It's that time when we really look at ourselves in the mirror at a soul level. And I think that this character, it being the Nine of Pentacles, understands this spiritual need. You don't get here without having these moments of authentic communication with yourself. So what do these two guidance cards tell us in the context of this reading? Well, firstly, this very accomplished Nine of Pentacles can tell this somewhat tight. There's a very tight feeling about this character. There's an anxiety here that I've accumulated what I've accumulated and now I need to hang on to it. And the Nine of Pentacles is reminding her, perhaps an earlier version of herself, that the real value comes when you let go of what's in your grasp and follow the natural cycles and energies of life. And this is the outcome. But the Judgment card doesn't let us just get away with the free-for-all of the Wheel of Fortune. It doesn't allow us to say, well, throw our hands up in the air and say, well, there's nothing I can do, it's all out of my hands. In terms of the spring equinox energy of seeding and beginning, this Queen of Swords, of course, can draw so much from the experiences and knowledge of how to be, how to plan, and what worked and what didn't work. So in your planning for what comes next, as you refine your ideas and edit your ideas, there's so much to be reaped in terms of lessons learned, not only about what works and what doesn't work, but also your strengths and weaknesses, and that comes from this internal reflection. So overall, this is such a beautiful reading for this September equinox that is almost upon us. In terms of projects we've already been working on, in the summer energies of our life at the moment, we've gathered our seeds, we understand the importance of the conservation of those seeds, and we have the reminder from the Wheel of Fortune to not hang on too tightly, but to go with the flow, to follow the seasons. In the spring equinox energy of seeding and beginning, we are backed up here by this beautiful Queen of Swords and her mental clarity, astuteness, and ability to plan, underpinned by this energy, wild horse energy, rearing to go. And the guidance is inviting you to focus on your self-sufficiency, underpinned by deep spiritual reflection, to really and truly come to terms with who you are as part of your evolution. And that holding energy in the middle here can guide your intuition about when to hold on, when to plan, when to let things happen according to their natural cycles, and when to unleash your energy into the new year. Wishing you all the best at this September equinox. Much love until next time. Welcome to those of you who chose the group represented by this gorgeous yellow daisy. As indicated in the introduction to this video, we have 3 groups of cards. The first have to do with the Northern Hemisphere autumn equinox energy of harvesting and releasing. On the right-hand side, we have the Southern Hemisphere or spring equinox energies of seeding and beginning. And in the middle, we have guidance on how these energies might be integrated for your highest purpose at the spring equinox. For each of these, there are 2 cards, and these might be considered the light and shadow aspects of each, or the conscious and subconscious. So let's get into your reading. On the Northern Hemisphere autumn equinox energies, what are you being invited to harvest from the fruits of your summer, and what are you being asked to preserve as you go into your winter, and what are you being invited to release? Having the Magician here at the end of your summer phase of productive energy in some aspect or aspects of your life is beautiful. The Magician has all the elements of the tarot and the universe at their disposal: fire, earth, air, water. They bring with them a full cycle that has already been completed. This is a beautiful opportunity for you to stop and reflect on the productiveness of the past 6 months since the last equinox, the summer aspects, the part of you that's been active and out in the world, doing your projects, being present, showing up, putting yourself out there. A meditation perhaps on the fruits of your labors and how those outputs, what you've been able to harvest, can be put to use. But note that this is a major arcana. This is almost pre-incarnation. So it's about extracting what will, at the next equinox, become seeds that can be planted. The Ace of Wands is in the shadow or unconscious position and has something to do with the need for release, another of the symbolisms associated with the autumn equinox. And that makes for quite an interesting conundrum, because the Ace of Wands is generally regarded as this beautiful, explosive energy. In fact, very much linked to the number 1 of the Magician. It's that moment when the seed cracks open and life comes forth from the universe. It's about drive and passion and action and moving forward. And yet here it sits in the autumn equinox, in the time of shedding and releasing. So the message seems quite clear. This is really a time for extracting the lessons, the value, the blessings, and the seeds from the full, bright summer activity, and letting go of the need for action in some or one or more aspects of your life. At the same time, of course, you've got southern hemisphere and spring equinox energy working around you. So let's see what that is. We have the Page of Cups, And we have the Nine of Swords. The Page of Cups is a really beautiful card to have for your spring equinox energy, which is all about seeding and beginning. The Page of Cups is, as a Cups card, to do with one's emotions. It's a very youthful, naive, enthusiastic energy. I particularly love this version of it, this young character. Consciously or unconsciously, an expression of love in the purest form over here. So sweet and so youthful. Also, a little dreamy and ungrounded, to say the least. You know, pigs might fly, but all of it is coming from their heart center. What a beautiful invitation in terms of the spring equinox energies that are available to you, to find those places in your life that require you to remember and embrace this energy of hopefulness and heart-centeredness. It's such a beautiful way of starting to think and feel and create around a new project, a new endeavor, a new initiative, wherever you're wanting to put your energy. So I love this invitation for you. In terms of what might be considered the shadow side of this, or the unconscious energies operating around this spring equinox, seeding, beginning energy, is the Nine of Swords. That is a very gnarly looking card, and I'm sure you're immediately aware of how very different these energies are. And so just at face value, I think that you can see what we're working with here as hopeful and faithful and naive. The Page of Cups is so anxiety-ridden, angstig, too much in the thoughts, lying awake all night, fretting and worrying. And in this particular version of this card, you know, we sort of have disembodied eyeballs and things that are very visceral and probably things we don't really want to look at. But how do we interpret this in terms of seeding and beginning? I would say that wherever in your life at the moment you are thinking of beginning something new, where you are planting seeds, it's highly likely that these two sides of yourself are going to be perhaps battling it out, particularly in the early hours of the morning when you're trying to sleep. And I would encourage you that rather than experiencing them as contradictory energies, energies that are in tension with one another, that are fighting with one another, is to see how the two of them can work together to balance one another out. The hopefulness of the Page of Cups is exactly the energy you need to calm your anxiety, and having your eyeballs on facts and figures and realities is exactly what you need to mitigate this very ungrounded aspect of the Page of Cups. So I encourage you to see how your inner child and your jaded adult self can work together to bring whatever it is you're wanting to bring into being in a grounded, calm, and realistic manner. All right, so let's see what guidance we have on how these various energies can be integrated for your highest purpose. We have the Strength card and we have the Hanged Man. Just beautiful, really, really beautiful. To me, and particularly in the context of this reading, the Strength card is the perfect representation of our inner tensions and inner contradictions, as well as the things in our external world that pull us in different directions. The Strength card epitomizes the bringing together, in this case, the innocence of the lamb and the wild beast of the lion. So it's reflected here in the innocence of the Page of Cups and the way our anxieties and our narratives and the stories that we tell ourselves can run away with us. But it's also about this tension here in the autumn equinox energy of having all that power at your hands. The lion is, after all, the king of the jungle, and yet being asked to release that urge to act, and instead to quieten down and calm the inner beast. And strength is the ability to hold both at the same time. In the shadow or unconscious aspect of the guidance is the Hanged Man. The Hanged Man is about taking a pause. It's about taking oneself outside of one's comfort zone, hanging upside down. In the traditional tarot, you'll know usually this card is depicted by a person hanging by their foot upside down from a tree. And it's all about gaining a different perspective. There's very much a sense from this depiction of the hanged man of almost swaddling oneself like a baby, taking everything you have and folding it in around yourself, holding yourself still for a period of time. As I indicated in the introduction to this reading, the equinoxes represent almost cosmic pauses, the holding of breath before the new cycle begins. And certainly, it's to help calm your anxieties. It's to help you take the time out to understand yourself better. To reflect on everything that you have learned and gleaned and gathered during the summer. And to develop an understanding as to why it's not quite time to act. These are two major arcanas. These are not insignificant lessons and practices for you. All in all, this is such a beautiful reading at the time of the September equinox. Take some time out. Reflect on those aspects of your life over the past 6 months where you have been in summer energy, and glean what you can from the products of that labor. Distill the essence from it so that you can harvest the seeds you need and take them with you into the hibernation of winter on those particular projects. Use the time to understand timing, that despite perhaps the impulse to want to act and carry forward your labors and your activities, the wisdom of knowing when to stop. And in terms of your spring equinox energy, the seeding and beginning, just the simple invitation to allow these seemingly contradictory aspects of self and experience to support one another in you, to integrate, so that this becomes your guiding energy into the new cycle. All the best to you. Have a wonderful September equinox. Until next time.